Very ambitious. Good evening. Welcome to the Monday, January 23rd, 2017 meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission. If anybody would like to speak and hasn't already filled out a sheet, you're welcome to do so. The sheets are located up at the desk up there. If you are invited to speak, we ask that you please come up to the podium and direct your questions and answers to the commission. Please try to refrain from repeating what somebody else has already stated. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Communications none. Old business. 1. Request of Alderman Tom Duane to approve the sale of parcel number 9-45 to Simonetz LLC for $1 to get it back on the tax roll. Out from the January 9th Planning Commission meeting. Recommendation, refer to Economic Development Authority.
All right, so this has had a little bit of a journey. It started as a request, communication that went to Urban Services Committee. They went there because Public Works is managing a parking lot there and had a contract with the adjacent property owner, Simonetz. In order to sell it, they felt, all right, we need to send this to the Plan Commission in terms of selling or getting rid of surplus property. After some review, this isn't technically surplus property. Surplus property is generally extra right-of-way that we lop off, when we close a street or move a street. This is a buildable lot. And so with that, we need to send this to the Economic Development Authority, which has before been responsible for selling city-owned properties. RDA has done RDA-owned properties. So the proper motion here would be to send this to the EDA as the proper body to make a recommendation to council for this sale.
Okay, thank you.
Jim?
Yes.
I'm not sure that I understand the process here. This has been going on a couple of months, and we were told that it was the Plan Commission's decision to determine whether it's surplus property or not. And I don't know. As I recall how things were handled in the past, if it was property that the Economic Development Authority had for economic development purposes, like property in the I-33 Business Park, for example, or the earlier business parks, then it would go to EDA. But I remember a lot of cases, where there were surplus properties and planning determined, surveyed the departments of the city to see if anybody needed that property for any public purpose. And if we didn't, then it would be declared surplus. Now, I can think of a lot of cases where properties are left after demolition or whatever, and the redevelopment authority will give the property to Habitat for Humanity or other groups once it's determined to be, in the city's interest to get it on the tax roll. So I'm not sure that Economic Development Authority is really the place that this should go. I don't know. To me, planning is the proper place to determine whether the city has a need for that property or not. If we don't have a need, it's surplus. And, it's ultimately up to the council, maybe the finance committee, as to what the value of the property should be, whether it should be sold for. But I'm not sure the Economic Development Authority is really the place to send it. I don't ever recall a case like this where there's been a piece of property that the city didn't need for its purposes that went through EDA unless it was something that was specifically designated to EDA, like business parks. So I don't know if there's some explanation on that, or legal basis, or where that recommendation is coming from.
Sure. I guess I'll speak a little bit to it if our city attorney is also here. When we reviewed this request, we had looked at, sales in the past of various city properties have gone through a few different channels. With that, I can't say we've been completely consistent in how we've handled that. With that, the surplus ones that we have found that have been done in the last few years have all involved basically, lopped off pieces of leftover right-of-way. I think there were some on, Velp Avenue, some of those triangles in the street that were let go. I think the most recent one was, two that came here were Norwood Avenue. I think there was some alignment between the street and the right-of-way, and Mason Street, Mason and Monroe.
Things like
surplus
street
there.
vacations, like we did with, the University Avenue section of the festival. We had a process where we determined that we could vacate that, and so we did.
Sure. What we saw here is that this was, the city owns 3 parcels in a row here on Main Street, and then the redevelopment authority owns a 4th parcel right to the west of all these 3. The RDA parcel and 2 EDA parcels are currently under a planning option that was granted through the RDA and the EDA to an entity to look at a development project there. We saw this as the 3rd additional parcel that was buildable or could potentially be used for economic development, and that's where we came with the recommendation that the EDA would look at handling this role. I don't know if our city attorney, wants to talk a little bit about the process, and I think we're willing to work on a process that works. It just, maybe she can explain a little bit more about our recommendation.
Thank you. So the reason this kind of is coming up, we agree that there's a process that needs to be hammered out and really establishing what it is that's going to happen anytime these requests come out. But in looking at the request, that the way it was brought forward, it was a request to INS to sell it for $1. We determined that INS did not have jurisdiction to actually make that designation as surplus property, that could only be done by sending it to plan, which is why it had ended up here, and that's why the request. And the reason it ended up here is because the pricing indicates that it was surplus property. When we were doing the review of it in order to bring that recommendation to you all, we determined that 1, it's buildable. 2, we've looked at the other sales that have occurred in the past for surplus property, and they were all unbuildable, they were really unusable, they really had no value. And 3, this one's currently under a lease. It is a property that has the city was leasing it out for, I believe, about $2,500 or so a year, which is fair market, or at the time was fair market rate of the parking spaces, calculated on a monthly basis. In exchange, instead of paying rent, they improved the actual property, so they put a parking lot on there, a paved parking lot, did all this work on it, and we have been offsetting their rent to allow them to offset those costs. So right now, it's not income generating, we're still offsetting it, but we are receiving a benefit in that our property's being, the value of our property has increased, and so we're offsetting the rent to do that. At some point, in the next 3 years or so, the offset will be complete and it will become revenue generating once again. And there is actually a provision in that lease that states that they have the ability to purchase it for fair market value at the expiration of 10 years, which is what they felt was, based on the reading of the agreement, an appropriate time to get a planning option onto it. And so based on that, the fact that it's encumbered under a lease, that there's actually a fair market value clause stated in there, the fact that it is in fact buildable, that it doesn't share any of the characteristics that the other surplus property has, we determined as law that it didn't qualify as surplus property. Now, because it didn't fall under that surplus property designation, that doesn't technically come to planning anymore. You guys have it 30 over surplus property. So we had to figure out where it goes. The only logical committee that was left at that point was EDA.
Okay, well, I understand that. This has been bucked around in committees for the last 3 months, and the council, in fact, did take action on it. It just seems kind of odd that after all that then we determine that it's not our role. I don't know, I just find it odd.
We agree, and a lot of it too is we are not necessarily completely following the procedure that's set out. And so when we do that, it kind of creates these weird procedural, I don't even know how to describe it, this process that we're in right now. And so we have to figure out a way to make sure that the process is clear and it's followed properly because one, it should not have ended up at INS. Two, it should not have even been presented until we had done an administrative review, determining whether or not it was actually surplus. I think that the reason that it looks so strange right now is because it did originate in the wrong place, and we were trying to, because we were assuming it was going to be surplus, we were trying to get it into the right path, and then it turned out not to be.
And I think to Attorney Chavez's point, when it gets sent, when a property gets, somebody makes an application for surplus property, there is an administrative review process that involves all the different departments. And I think until it got sent here, until we started doing that process, we really didn't uncover some of the nuances of this property with the lease and the agreement. With that, it's been in a few different spots. The agreement has been enforced more or less by our parking utility in DPW, and not until we dove into that agreement did we find that it would not, at this case, based on the clauses in the agreement, be of the best interest of the city to turn over this property or sell this property at this time for what was stated or what was recommended, that sale for $1.
Okay. So is the conclusion that this property should be held along with the other ones that are city-owned along there for economic development purposes?
Our initial recommendation based on, one, the development potential, but more so the structure of the lease that is in place right now, I could say that our staff recommendation will most likely be for the city to retain ownership of the property and maintain the lease agreement. I think that is one thing just in our cursory review that we found that we would recommend. That it is more advantageous for us both from a development perspective, but also from a financial perspective. I know it seems odd that, a city owning property being tax exempt would be financially advantageous, but the way this lease is structured, it would be.
Okay.
Hey, Plan Commission. How you doing? Few comments on this. Came to my committee initially that I sit on, INS, and of course we found out it was the wrong place to go. So Law Department recommended we send it to you. So we sent it to where it was recommended. This has been going on for many months. This property, since I was on the council back in 2002, has shown no interest. Nobody's wanted it. It's sat vacant, not generating any taxes, doing nothing. And until the local company right next to it said, hey, we could really use a bigger area. And so they spent, I don't know, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 really making a nice parking lot and a fence and improving it nicely. So I really think you can handle this. I don't think you're doing anything illegal, may not be the proper path. But until we get maybe a process in place, you're not doing anything you can't do, really. And this decision is going to come back to council, whether it goes through you or whether it goes through economic development. Council's going to get the final debate and say so on it. I think it's important to get this back on the tax roll. And it's nice that there's no TIF requested. That's a nice thing. And about property that we're giving away, we gave away the air rights above the ramp for nothing, for $0. We gave it away. We didn't charge them anything. And here, somebody who actually has a project, and we're fighting this local fellow, tooth and nail. I mean, let's be a little friendlier to our local guys who are trying to make a go of it, not asking for TIF money. So, hope you handle it here. I mean, it's going to go to council, and we'll debate this to death there, but handle it here. Thanks.
Can I make a clarification? Just so that everybody is aware, council has already taken action on this. It was determined at the, I believe, last meeting on the 20th, that if the Plan Commission approves the sale of surplus property, the property has been sold.
So as I'm listening, it seems that the appropriate process wasn't initially followed, right? Kevin, is that correct? It did not go to the departments to be vetted?
Correct, when it was sent to INS, and when it was sent to, then we found out INS was not the right party for it, and that basically it should be classified or looked at as surplus property. Then it was sent to Plan Commission for review, and doing our standard administrative review and finding out more about the lease and the details of the lease, we realized that this just is not a surplus property like we've done before. And that's why I think the recommendation to send it to Plan was because on its face, it looks like, yes, this is an extra piece of property that, okay, the city could dispose of. And doing that review and looking at the different departments, finding that additional information makes our recommendation that, no, this is not just surplus property.
But, so there's a lease. How many more years does that lease go?
I believe there's 3.
So I can speak to that. The
Sure.
lease actually does not have an end date. It has a period after which the property owner has a right to purchase it for fair market value, and that's at 10 years, and that comes up, I believe, in 3 years. However, there is no actual expiration date attached to it, so the lease is at this point perpetual.
So this group improved it. They improved this land, and we haven't really collected money on the land, right? We're just saying, well, you put in this $8,000 or whatever, so then,
In lieu of them paying us, they improved our property and bestowed a benefit upon the city.
So at this point right now, based on our review, we have found that in terms of credit, the city, or they still have about $8,000 worth of
I was
credit
going to ask that.
left to continue paying their lease.
So would they say, well, forget it, we're not going to lease it anymore? I mean, how is it a benefit to us if after 3 years they stop paying the lease, of which they're not paying anyway, because they're just kind of giving the money back to
Sure.
us?
I guess a few things. One, they've improved the property. So if this would hit the private market, there's a positive value to it. If you look at just the adjacent properties around there, the area around there, if you just, would do a comparable of what another parking lot is.
Yes,
This property in itself would be worth about $22,000 to $25,000.
okay.
So with that, there's some value to the property. If that property were to go on the tax rolls right now, the property taxes paid on that would actually be less than the lease that's coming in right now.
Right.
So we're getting an additional sum, we're getting, in terms of the financial advantageousness, it's beneficial for us to keep the lease because the money coming in from the lease is greater than the property taxes that would be on it.
Do you anticipate this person keeping this property? I mean, are they using it as a parking lot for their business
Yes.
at this point?
They are.
So that, do you see their intent is to go out then and resell it?
Look, they could continue to use it as is. They could look at selling it. On itself, by itself, it would be very tough to build something, a standalone structure there.
Okay.
With that, if you attach this parcel to their existing parcel, you could redevelop something on that parcel or those parcels combined.
And have we ever done anything like this before where we've sold a piece of property similar to this for $1?
Well, I mean, to Alderman Ware's point, in terms of the city has recommended transfer of property for $1 or some thereof.
But this kind of property?
In terms of one that was being used, I mean, I think the Cherry Street ramp is somewhat, of an akin. I think the difference here being that parcel transfer was intended to generate tax revenue that would be more advantageous. Property taxes on that would be higher than the parking revenue that we would be taking in. In this case, the parking revenue is higher than the taxes that we would be taking in.
So in a perfect world, the city would hope to get 3 more years of rent from the lease, which really, I get we're not getting any money, and then possibly sell it to these persons for $22,000.
Which is part of the lease clause, is that it will be sold at fair market value.
So
giving
they
it away-
understood that going into the lease. They signed that, they
That is
understood.
part of the lease that says it would be sold.
So
They have
where
the
did this
first
come
right
from?
to purchase it.
Where
And
did the
so
$1 come from then? I mean,
That came from Alderman Dwayne.
Dwayne,
Correct.
but do we know based on What? Yeah, was there a request from,
He made a communication at, must have been
Just
November council meeting. That's where this started.
okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
I guess I should have mentioned, Alderman Dwayne apologizes, he had a medical procedure today, so he can't ride in a car, so he called and asked if we could come. I just wanted to point out that it's valuable really only because they improved it, otherwise it was worthless, nobody wanted it. So it really only has any value now because they improved it. That's the only reason it has value. Can either party end the lease? Could we end the lease, say, we don't want the lease anymore?
I would have to double check the lease terms.
Because otherwise just end the lease and sell it to them. Can you check that?
I can check on it.
Can we take care of that tonight? Since we're handling it tonight, it'd be important to know. If we can just end the lease and sell it, if that's the holdup. Thanks.
Commissioner Wood.
I'm pretty put out by the fact that we're sitting here discussing this right now. I do not have any information in front of me. This is not on my agenda. You have given your recommendation, and why are we sitting here and discussing this to no end? Could somebody please share that with me? The other thing that comes out, it's kind of glaring here also, is you say that it's a property that's not buildable by itself. However, if you could combine it to the other properties, it might be worth some money and be buildable. But on the same token, I don't have any backup information. I have nothing here to make any decision on this tonight, and I think it's being discussed out of turn. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Henson.
I guess I'm confused how it ended up, I mean, when I think surplus property, I think about what we talked about with Norwood, where it was like a sliver because the street moved, and, I mean, surplus means, just little bits of land. I mean, this is a whole lot. I guess my question is, how did it even come to being called surplus and us selling it for $1? And I guess I do agree with Commissioner Wisbisky too, that I have no information. I mean, we've got a map up now, but we don't have anything in here other than a recommendation. You were saying that the fair market value with the improvements is about 22 to 25,000, kind of guesstimate. If they hadn't improved it, what would have been the fair market value? Would have been just like 8 to 10 less than what it is, or?
Probably about half that, because it's all parking lot, so it puts that at about $5 a square foot for improved value. Just land, pure land in that area would probably be about $250.
It's a very narrow lot, and, I think I don't want to get into what the price should be on it. I don't think that's a decision for the planning commission. I think the decision for us is it surplus or isn't it? And, you can talk about things like on the roof of the parking ramp and so on. Well, clearly, if this lot were not available to the business that we leased it to for a long period of time, and, I haven't seen the documents either. So I don't know.
Why are we discussing it?
So I don't know a lot of
Somebody please answer that.
So I don't know a lot of the detail on it, but clearly, if you take it away from this business owner, you will be harming the business. So it's kind of the opposite of what we normally do in with economic development efforts to assist businesses.
I can just point out the parcel on the map here. Call it the GIS. This is 9-45, the subject lot. You can see the improved parking area. It's probably substandard for a parking lot. It doesn't have sufficient aisle space. It's really dependent on the neighbor. So it's really kind of part and parcel of that property already, the way it's being utilized. But that's what it looks like today.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Verma.
as I understand it, and just to clarify, I believe Alderman Wisbisky may have misspoken. It is a buildable lot, right?
You can, it has an improvement on it, it has
It's
a parking
narrow,
lot
but it
on
could be built
You
on.
can put a parking lot on it like is
But
done
no
this,
building.
so.
And as I understand it, the parcels that we have considered as surplus have not been buildable lots. Therefore, this was not appropriately, as Director Bonk earlier explained in response to Alderman Nenig's question, which is why we're about this. it was improperly referred here, and it does seem like it should be properly referred to Economic Development Authority. I don't see that we're making a decision except to recognize that because it's buildable, it's not the sort of thing that we deal with as surplus. So I'm perfectly comfortable making that motion.
You're making a motion to pass
To
it on as
refer
recommended?
it to Economic Development
I
Authority.
second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to refer it to the EDA. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No? Okay. New business. Item 2, consideration with possible action on a request for a conditional use permit to construct a detached garage at 902 South Madison Street that exceeds the height requirements of the low-density residential district. Submitted by Pat Drury, Drury Designs, on behalf of Al and Sally Hicks, property owners.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. This is a request for a conditional use permit to permit a detached accessory garage at 902 South Madison Street. And that property is located on the southwest corner of Polier and Madison Street. And of course, it's the Fox River here. This is the property that's in question here. This is part of the Astor Neighborhood Association. The Astor neighborhood. Mainly single-family homes in this particular area, older historic area. The comprehensive plan shows this area as low-density residential. The zoning is R1. So the proposal is to remove an existing garage from the site and construct a new detached garage. So this is a site plan provided by the applicant. Showing Polier Street, Madison, is kind of the same orientation as before. This is the principal dwelling here, 902, and then the proposed garage would be to the rear. There's existing driveways that would access the garage, so those are not changing. These are some elevations of the proposed structure. Apparently at one time there was a carriage house on this lot that was removed. Garage was placed there, which is now going to be removed and will be placed with this structure here. The reason for the conditional use permit is the height of the overall structure. It's about 25 feet to the peak level here. And the sidewall heights are over the 10 foot. Accessory uses really should not exceed 16 feet unless they receive a conditional use permit through the Plan Commission Council. Because this is a historic district, the applicant has been to the HPC already, and they've kind of granted their blessing for this request. So we did notify affected property owners. We didn't receive any calls or questions regarding this. We are supporting the request. Two conditions. One is being the standards regulations regarding site plan review, which is pretty standard. And item B is the continuance of a similar style architecture, exterior construction, and so forth. The applicant is here tonight if you have further questions.
Have you approached the Astor Neighborhood Association?
I don't know that they have.
Have you had any correspondence with them?
They were notified of the request. That's standard procedure.
Thank you.
And as I understand, the intention is to meet that condition number B.
Yes.
That is
correct.
that the design and materials will be in keeping with the rest of the
Correct.
property, the historical.
And this is a structure that's a full 3 stories, so this is behind the structure, it's really not visible from Madison, might be visible from Polier, but the house kind of blocks the view of the proposed use.
Any further discussion? Yes, Commissioner Miller.
There's no issue with either the easements or the new concrete pad that's going to be there? That will be a new, right?
There's some new paving, right, but most of the existing driveway will remain. There's some non-conformity there that's allowed to remain, to be replaced, but there shouldn't be any conflicts with that.
Any Commissioner Wistad?
Am I correct in, it looks to me like I'm onto the fact that they actually have tried to tailor-make the building to like a carriage house?
Yes.
To fit in with the neighborhood?
Yes, more of a replica, I think, of what was there, but they can probably better
Yeah, the
address
actual
the...
original carriage house is a separate residence off-site.
Oh.
So we took design elements off of that, it's particularly the brow window you see in the front elevation. That design is right off the actual historic building that's right down the street from that.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? The chair will entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Pat Drury?
Yes.
And anything else you wish to add?
No, just thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Al Hicks?
We're good, thank you.
We're good, okay, thank you. We'll return to regular order of business.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the request. Any further discussion? Hearing none? All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
This is cool.
Motion passes.
Good respectful mood on the design.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Item 3, consideration with possible action on a request for a conditional use permit to construct a pool and pool features located at 3065 Sitka Street that exceed the height requirements of the low-density residential district. Submitted by Joel Erfurth, MAC4 Engineering and Surveying LLC on behalf of Dan Schmidt, property owner.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. This is also a very similar request. This is also a conditional use permit to allow for a pool and rock wall to be constructed behind this residence at 3065 Sitka Street. This is the subject area here. This is I-43 Sitka. McCall Park is just to the east. This is about a 25-acre parcel here, their primary residence, just located north. Again, it's kind of an area that's undeveloped to the west. There are some single and two-family homes to the south, and the Bear Creek Parkway is to the north. Going through the comprehensive plan, again, low-density residential is planned for this property as well as adjacent properties, and the current zoning is low-density residential as well. This didn't quite come through too well, but this is a copy of the site plan showing the existing residence, the pool features and rock walls that are located behind the principal dwelling. This is a drawing showing what's being proposed in the back. This is the primary residence here, bordering the Conservancy or Bear Creek Parkway to the north. What you see in blue are the water features, pool features. There are other features that are kind of integrated into there along the parkway and on the west side here that are rock wall. They are man-made, manufactured walls that have like a skeleton, and then there's some sort of spray coat that goes over the top of them, giving them kind of a rock wall feature. Some of those features exceed 16 feet in height. Some of them are at 20, 25 in overall height. So again, they exceed the requirements that are allowed for an accessory use. This is kind of a cross-section view, kind of giving you kind of a look and feel of that. On the right-hand side is the Bear Creek Parkway. They are proposing an 8-foot tall fence as a screening wall, and then you can kind of see some of these rock wall features that are built here and here. In this case, built right into the fence itself, and this one is a freestanding one here. So there's kind of a valley that's created, for example, along this area here. So you kind of create a valley feel around that side. So we have notified affected property owners. We haven't received any calls or concerns regarding this request. The applicant was before the Board of Appeals at the last meeting on Monday, last Monday. They were seeking two variances. One was a relationship of the accessory uses exceeding the principal use, and a variance for the setback along the Conservancy or the Parkway area. At this point here, because it's an accessory use, we would expect a 4-foot setback. The Board of Appeals granted them a variance to build as it appears here. The other concern is there's a letter or memo from the Parks Department. Because this is being built right on the park property, they have concerns about runoff of water, and this is being addressed by the applicant. But they want that water collected so it doesn't come off the rock wall feature and then spill over into the parkway system. So the applicant is working on a system to collect that water so there's no intrusion on the city parkway. So we are recommending approval of this request. We've got 3 conditions. Again, a standard one with the site plan review. Item B is kind of a unique one in the sense that there are some slides and some features that are significant that are more like commercial type construction, and we're asking them to provide stamped plans by professional engineers to show us that it's been designed and will be constructed to a certain standard. I think they're going to volunteer that information as well. And then item the third one here is that the comments provided by the Park Department that are before you be met. And again, those are ongoing with the applicant to work on those issues. So we are supporting the request with these 3 conditions.
Thank you.
And condition number 3, if you go back where you just were. Yeah. condition number 3 would deal with that 8-foot tall fence there that abuts right up to the rock construction, right? And the
Right.
concern of the park department that there might be direct runoff. So there would need to be some kind of channeling of that water or a higher fence or whatever.
Gutter system or something.
Whatever.
This is kind of a section of the fence, so that I believe it's a masonry fence, so it's a significant structure, but there is talk about maybe some capturing the water somewhere at that point and getting that back onto the site.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Oh, and one other thing. As I understand it, before us is the rock wall as the structure that we're considering.
Yes.
Not the cabana or the pool house or any of the other structures. Those came under the appeal for exceeding the square footage of the primary residence,
Correct,
correct?
it's just for your information, it's a two-step process, just the way it's written in the code, they come here for the height and to the board for other matters.
So we're just worrying about rocks.
Just the height of the, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Commissioner Listecki.
I believe that wall is going to be pretty similar to what he has around the other part of the property. It's not just a plain old rock wall or stone wall or concrete wall or anything, if I'm guessing right.
Well, I think the applicant can better describe
Oh,
exactly
okay.
the materials and what it's going to look, but it's going to have a rock look and feel to it.
Okay, so it's blending it in with the pool construction.
Right, I think it's all going to blend, but there's a different type of construction that's going on here. It's not that masonry brick look, it's a different type of construction.
Okay. And I guess I'd like to also add that the property is just gorgeous the way it is already, and I think this is a really pleasing addition.
So what's putting up right against the Conservancy line is a 14-foot rock wall?
Right, so this is kind of part and parcel here. So there's an 8-foot fence, which is this fence here, a solid wall. But built into that fence is part of this rock wall. So again, there's some sort of caging system that's built as a structure, and there's some sort of spray coat that's sprayed around that to give that effect of a rock wall. But it is integral into one piece.
And they've addressed any issues with erosion, because the Conservancy has had a lot of
Yes.
issues with that, and properties being built right up against their property lines.
Right. They're very aware of that, and they're working through a stormwater management plan to address those concerns, which is also being reviewed by our Department of Public Works.
Any further discussion?
I'd move to suspend the rules to hear from interested parties.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Rules are suspended. Joel Erfurt?
We're going to try to do this in tandem here, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'm Steve. I'm the architect for representing Dan Schmidt, the property owner.
Steve Klessig?
Klessig, right. And Joel is the civil engineer. So to the points that Paul mentioned, I have a team of engineers working on this. And we met with the builder, Jim Kasner, back there in his office right after the Board of Appeals meeting to discuss the very issue of the erosion. And Paul described it very well, that it would be a fancy gutter between the wall and the rock wall. So you have the masonry wall, which will be a split-face masonry intertwined with panels of brick. So the house is all brick, but we thought for this amount of fence that we would face the Conservancy and face the parts of the wall that are seen by the homeowner with the same exact materials. So the park participant and the homeowner get the same aesthetic. And it's going to be a very attractive wall with pilasters and brick insets and a stone cap, so very attractive both sides. But where you're looking at the 14-foot high surface, we're building that in, and we are addressing the drainage. If you have any questions on how that's going to be addressed, my civil engineer is working with Newman Pools, who is a statewide, actually a nationwide contractor of these kinds of structures, and they have structural engineers on staff. I personally have a structural engineer on staff to make sure all the requirements of footings and the things that the city wanted to take a look at from that other point that was made. And then there's a slide, and that's we're not actually asking for a variance on the 14 feet because that's under your 16, but to the left side of that picture is where you're seeing some taller work where it's providing some height for the slide. Joel, anything you want to add?
Just kind of reiterating what, Paul had said that, on the last conditional uses, even with these, the heights we're proposing here to, for the conditional use, it'll be or be lower than the height of the house. And there really are no neighbors to the west. Mr. Schmidt owns all that property from the south. The house itself is over 800 feet from the front of the house from Sitka Street. And the conservancy in the back, obviously, there's no neighbors. There is a slight trail up against that fence, but, when you're looking at the angles and so forth, that thing would have to be 50 feet high if you were going to see it from that trail walking nearest the fence. And then to the west, to the east is the park, which again, it doesn't afford a view to anyone other than, in the residents themselves, so.
And we just heard about the previous applicant who, they talked about the height of their house kind of hiding the carriage house. I wanted to mention that, because we didn't mention it, that the house, the principal use is a 2-story, probably closer to a 3-story. Its peak is 35 feet high, so anybody out at Sitka would never see this because it's behind a 35-foot high house.
Could you explain a little bit about how you would handle the stormwater? Would it be discharged somewhere, or how would you handle that?
Well, we're working, and we have been working through Public Works, and it's still ongoing. Some of these, part of the process was to flesh out, the variances that we dealt with last week, and then the conditional use permit. So we're not 100% there yet, but we have been working really closely. Paul's probably getting sick of seeing us in his office. We've met, on 3-4 occasions, but essentially, it doesn't show well on this drawing. If this conditional use is, granted tonight, that we will do like a gutter system, most likely, either a gutter or drain system to collect that water. But the rest of the water from the disturbed area, for the most part, is going to be either routed this way into a biofilter or infiltration basin, and then the remaining water will be coming down around. There's an existing swale through here. It'll be coming through the swale, coming back down and around, and it'll be, that stormwater feature is designed to reduce the storm events to meet city code. This project is actually large enough that it's actually going to fall under state stormwater requirements as well, but cities are more stringent anyway. But we're working through those issues with those. It's kind of cart before the horse type of thing. Once we fully intend to get the site plan approval process going once, we get a clear picture of what we all have to handle here. So, but there's most likely going to be just a biofilter in the back there.
But there will be no stormwater leaving the property.
Well, there will be stormwater leaving the property, but at the prescribed rates with the city.
Sorry.
Tying
Thank you.
and it's tying
Architect, engineer.
And we're tying into the city storm sewer system there, so we're not directly discharging at grade, which, that Parkway's had numerous erosion control issues, and we do not want to be part of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kasman, did you wish to speak?
No,
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will return to regular order of business.
motion approved.
Second,
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion?
with the conditions that were.
With. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item 4, consideration with possible action on the request to approve the Legends District Master Plan.
Thank you. So, this is a very exciting plan for me. We've all worked very hard on this, but there are a lot of things that I want to touch base on before I hand this over to our consultant, Casey Shaw, who's been working with us pretty closely on this plan. So, within the staff report, you guys can note some of the basic outline that we have, what we've worked on, how the project came to fruition. This did get approved to start the process back in April from the Plan Commission. It was originally known as the Stadium Entertainment District. So this is the follow-up to that. What you have in front of you, which you received a few weeks ago, is the draft plan, which is our final draft.
Within that, we have a bunch of different chapters that deal with looking at the site as it exists today, what the market study shows would be valuable for us, generally what sites would be great for redevelopment, and then also an entire chapter that's dedicated to design, which is unique for the master plans we've done in the city. Typically, we don't have anything that will be directly implemented as far as zoning or a design overlay, and with this plan, we do intend to take chapter 4 and then to work through our zoning administrator to make sure that we can do a rezoning and then also a design overlay or a PUD to assure that chapter 4 is maintained once it does actually get implemented. So the basic things we want to look at here are going to be the citizen steering committee that we had involved in this, and then also the public participation that we had. We had really positive feedback on all of these things. Our citizen steering committee, the only issue that we had here concerning any other master plan that we've done is that there isn't a neighborhood here. No one lives in this district. So finding people for the steering committee, we thought, well, we might as well reach out to the people who own the property or own the businesses that are located there. So with that, we have a lot of people represented as far as the businesses are concerned. We also had somebody from PMI, because we wanted to make sure that the entertainment uses that we were looking to capitalize on were also reflected in this. We also had somebody from the Marquette Park Neighborhood Association, which is the closest neighborhood association. And then also at all of our public meetings, the neighborhood associations were invited, and they showed up pretty big. So it was really nice to have everybody there. And Lisa, your plan commissioner here, sat on it on behalf of all of you. So big group represented there. With this, we had 6 different steering committee meetings, and between those, we had 3 public workshops. At those workshops, we had our consulting team basically just do a lot of surveying the crowd to see what they would be interested in seeing, and then also then presenting information back. So as we collected data, it was basically an open dialogue between us and the public to assure that what we were working on was what they wanted us to be working on. We had great positive feedback with that. There was a survey that was done that was submitted online, which we had a lot of people, Quace can speak to that, but a lot of people did respond, which was great because it was over the summer, people get busy, so we did have a lot of feedback on that. From that, we basically determined a lot of things through the steering committee, then also the public workshop. Those things would be the name, which is the Legends District, which is reflective of a lot of different things. We do have the Oneida Nation Walk of Legends in this district. The streets themselves are named after Packer legends. And then also, this area has a very rich history, but there aren't any buildings that reflect that. So to do a historic district would have been really a false placement here. So we wanted to make sure that the vintage feel was still there, talking about the legends of the Packers, the legends of Green Bay, but then also tied it in with the name, and then also our design theme, which was industrial chic. So to take some of the complementary features of what the Village of Ashwaubenon is doing with the Packer Plaza, and then also looking at Lambeau Field itself, which is a good mix of industrial features, metal, brick, all those different features are reflected in Chapter 4 in our design features. So all the redevelopment sites that were spoken about in Chapter 3, those were selected by the public workshops themselves. Pretty much everything you're seeing throughout the plan was dictated completely by our steering committee and then the public workshops. Everyone's very agreeable to the high-density, multi-use, making sure that everything was brought up to the streets, that the design is different, and we want to be able to be complementary with the Village of Ashwaubenon and what they're doing with the Packers, but then also stand up for ourselves. So we're looking at the design as a cohesive effort between everybody who's in the entertainment area, but then also using our multi-use district, something that's much more livable, that you can use year-round. That's what our highlight is going to be here. So if this were to be accepted and implemented through Plan Commission and City Council, we will be following up with doing an adoption to our comprehensive plan, so that way this is an official part of our comprehensive plan. We would also be doing a rezoning to take the zoning from, right now it's a mix of industrial and commercial sites, to take it all to some sort of a multi-use commercial district, and then also to do some sort of a design overlay to assure that Chapter 4 is then reflected in that. That's to kind of give people some assurance of what they can be investing into. So design overlays are really beneficial for people who already own property, and then also people who want to develop in the area, so that way they know if they make a major investment in an area that it's going to be protected because everything else is going to look similar or, complementary at the least. So those are the basic things that we've outlined here. So those would be the follow-up actions that the planning department would need to take. And from here, I'm going to introduce Quason Shaw, who is a member of the consulting team from Veerbecker, who we had approved to hire. He's going to go over the plan itself, so what we were looking at, who we involved, what the main connection points are going to be, and then how we plan to implement this.
Good job.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Quason Shaw. I'm with Veerbecker, and we were tasked with putting together the coordinating the Legends District Master Plan. So our area of focus is roughly 90 acres, 87 acres approximately, right over here on the southwest part of the city of Green Bay. You see the red boundaries, our outline area, Lombardi Avenue, the city limits to the west, city limits to the south, and also along Ashland Avenue to the east. And then what we started to look for in this, with this plan, we want to look at how do we connect this to other parts of the city, particularly like the downtown as well. We have connection points going to the downtown, but also how do we connect to the neighborhood directly to the north of there? Along, you have like Norwood, 10th Street, 14th Street, places along those natures. But also, how do we connect to other parts? I know Stephanie had mentioned coordinating with the Schwabenheim, looking at what they're doing to our south, and then also to what's happening over to the west as well too. So when you look at this map, it kind of shows like what are our key connection points. You see like the large asterisks; those are what the steering committee has identified as key focal points. How do we? These are areas that we need to enhance in order to better connect individuals into the community. Right along where you see Brett Favre Pass there to the west, and then Ashland Avenue and Lombardi. These would be our large gateway features. These could be reminiscent of like you'll see like large district banners or some sort of like entryway gateway feature, iron gateway or something of that nature. Then you also see along like Reggie White Way and Bart Starr Drive as well too. We wanted to look at these as connecting points as well too. If you look at, these streets don't line up with the streets to the north, so when we look at, how do we get residents from that neighborhood, or even just from my activity standpoint as well too, if there's an event or anything happening in the area, how do we better connect people there? How do we line things up, and how do we, issue design features and things of that nature? Then you also see more activity node areas that we wanted to kind of focus on as well. You see those are more like the white circles that you see on the map. One is on our right along to the north along Lombardi Street, Lombardi Avenue and 14th Street, right where the Hudson Sharp property is right now. And then there's another one on Tony Canadeo Run, boundary between Reggie White and Bart Starr. Then another one right in front of the Tundra Lodge area as well. Those are areas that we identified, or the steering committee identified, as potential activity nodes. How do we increase those areas as well along with the Reggie White there as well too, to the east of the Hudson Sharp property as well. We looked at coming in with different kiosk and wayfinding techniques, signage of that in area as well too. That's where you see like the different, you see the eyes and the light blue with the eye circle around it. So that was an area as well that we looked at for in terms of wayfinding. This map also shows some density features. You see like the dark orange along Lombardi Avenue. That's where the steering committee decided that this would be like our highest density, ranging from 5 stories up to 7 stories as a maximum. The lighter, the medium shaded orange, that will be our medium density area where we focused on 3 to 5 stories right in there. And then the lighter shade, almost the beige color, that's where we looked at our low density. But that would have a minimum of a 2-story. The steering committee felt it was important that we didn't have any 1-story buildings in that area as well too. So they wanted to look at the height density with that as well. And then, like Stephanie said, we had our public meetings. These are some redevelopment sites that our public workshop that the public had voted on. The first being the Hudson Sharp property. 2 is the Stadium View parking lot. 3 is development site along Tony Canadeo Run, bounded by Reggie White and Bart Starr. These were just chosen by our steering committee, but also ratified by the public workshops as well too. These are sites that they feel could be conceptual sites. There's no plan to run out tomorrow and throw shovels in the ground. This is a long-term process. This entails working with the property owners, making sure that there's a cohesive development that they're in favor of and the public is in favor of, or any developer is in favor of as well too. But these are just some of the key sites that the public had voted on. Looking at the current land use and zoning, pretty straightforward to what you guys have right now with the commercial and retail focus over there, small industrial focus as well. And then we look at what are our proposed zoning for long term. Here you see in the blue, that's more for like civic plazas. We're looking at currently that site right there and with the light blue, that's the retention pond there. We felt that would be a great location for a potential public plaza. How do we redefine that area, include a public plaza, kind of re-landscape that area? And then you can see where we have mixed use is the darker pink color as well too. So those new developments in that area will focus on being mixed use, whether it's residential, commercial, office, some sort of combination of that. The peach color, that would be where it would just strictly be commercial use as well too. And then when you see like the white circles as well, those are activity nodes or public plaza nodes that the steering committee had decided on would be excellent locations. One is right where the Brett Favre Steakhouse parking lot is, right in there to kind of help with that connectivity point, further off to the Rush Center, Lambeau Field, areas of that nature. Also along Lombardi Avenue, again, that's a highly traveled area as well. That could be in the future some sort of connecting point or some sort of activity node, depending on in the future what type of development goes in there as well too. Like Stephanie said, industrial chic was a style for our architectural style that we kind of looked at for the district, including the lighting, the bricks, the industrial metal, things of that nature, kind of mimicking what's going on in the area as well. Here's some other design recommendations that you guys will see in your plan as well. Then we looked at some of the streetscape options. We have 4 different ones where we looked at. One of the things that we wanted to do was activate the street over there. How do we widen the sidewalks? We have like cafe zones and things of that nature where pedestrians can interact. You see in A and B, there are some where it's different, where there's no median. And then in C and D, it's an example of here's activity zones or for the medians in the middle of the street. One you could have, and in C, you see that there is a tree in the middle as well too, where you have like a wider landing space. D is more of a smaller one where it's just, probably a 2 to 3 where it's just gives safe pedestrian crossings. We really looked at this along Lombardi Avenue and it's particularly along Town of Cannondale Run where it's just such a wide street and there's no buffer. If you ever go over there on any activity day, you see that there's just masses of people just wandering around, or I shouldn't say wander around, they're going to a specific location. But the streets are crowded as well, so we looked at like safety features for that as well. And then our design guidelines, I mean, you'll see in different sections, particularly in Chapter 4, we wanted to have wide sidewalks and contemporary pedestrian amenities, varied facades and materials with minimal setbacks. We looked at the height requirements, reduced parking requirements as well, no front parking. That was the steering committee was very adamant that they didn't want any front parking, that they wanted everything kind of structured into the rear. Or we looked at for future development, how do we incorporate underground parking or some sort of parking structure within a mixed-use development as well. So that's the district in a nutshell, kind of a synopsis of what you guys have read. So I guess I'll turn it over to Stephanie and for any questions or.
Through an awful lot of stuff.
Yes.
It is a lot to
Yes.
take in, and I'm appreciating the thought that has gone into this. I think it's a very, very exciting proposal.
Absolutely.
One specific thing that you mentioned along the way was the activity node right by the Brett Favre Steakhouse. You said, I believe, that it's where the parking lot is.
Correct. Yeah, not Brett Favre Steakhouse, the parking lot.
The parking lot.
Yeah.
Right, but what do you envision instead of a parking lot which will still provide access to people who need to park for the steakhouse?
Sure, and when I say the parking lot, we're not talking about taking the entire parking lot, it's a portion of the parking lot. If you, it could be very similar to what you see on with the Packer Heritage Trail on Cherry Street, where part of the Cherry Street lot was taken. I think there was probably about 8 to 10 spaces there where you create like this public gathering space. So it's not going to be a large plaza. It's not what we're calling for, but it's something similar. That would be something similar as an example.
And as I recall, that's right close to one of the gateways.
Correct.
As you come in from the whole area that reaches toward Lambeau.
Yep, that would be Holmgren Way and Brett Favre Pass there.
And so that prevents people from being gated right into the middle of the parking lot.
Correct. That's the idea.
Yeah, okay, I get it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I had a question looking at the one-year work plan. One of the items was create a master PUD ordinance. What would a master PUD ordinance look like? I don't think we've used master PUDs anywhere.
I think that's just really embellished language where we're going to do a design overlay.
Just to specify the
The
design
PUDs are used
requirements.
usually just to make sure we're regulating anything specific that we're looking for. A design overlay does the same thing. It's going to be, we're going to have to look at it as staff to see which one's going to be the best way to go. Because sometimes if you just do a straight zoning you don't really get what you're looking for. If you do a PUD, sometimes they're too stringent, so there are a lot of different planning options that we can look at, but we're basically just looking to do something that goes over the whole district that will help us do the design
I
features.
presume where that came from was that we found that a large portion of the property in this area is under the PUD right now, and it's probably a desire to have some consistency among the PUDs.
Correct.
That might be approved in the future. Is that pretty much what-
That was the thinking, correct. Like Stephanie said, it was just to include the entire district, kind of clean up the stuff. I shouldn't say the stuff, but clean up the language from the others.
Okay, and the other question I had, again, on the one-year work plan, 5.12 of the document, it looks to me like number 13 and number 19 are the same thing. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, they brought that to my attention last week, so that'll be cleaned up.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
We will definitely clean that up, so.
How did you find that?
You read it diligently.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Brennan?
I'm really excited about this. I think it takes full advantage of the energy to the west. It takes us a step further into the sort of thing that many other cities have been doing in creating entertainment zones that have a kind of heritage or vintage feel, but also bring people in, and this one even addresses the issue of residency so that you have a little increase in the population that would be served by it. The one thing that just, every time I run into it, sets me back is this notion about an up to 7-story frontage on Lombardi. I don't get it. It seems to me that, and if you could go back to that map that shows the massing, there we are.
Yep.
It seems to me that that blocks the view of the district and keeps people from seeing into the district and seeing the liveliness of it. When I look at the images here that are provided as examples, almost all the images that the public and that the steering committee endorsed don't go above 4 or 5 stories. There are 1 or 2 that are up to 7 that begin to look a little bit like the old housing projects, and that just gives me the willies. So I'm really concerned about the functionality of that as a block there, and I'm also wondering about the other dense area just on the other side of, is it Cannondale that's at the bottom there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you could speak to that, I'd appreciate it, because I haven't understood why.
Sure. I mean, when you look at density, I mean, it's 7 stories. When you start looking at it, we wanted to take advantage of some of the views from over there. When you look at over there now, there's absolutely nothing blocking your view over there.
So you've got views of a wonderful working class neighborhood.
Well, it depends on how the building is orientated. So when you look at it, so if you're looking at building new residential, so it could be, when we're talking about mixed-use development, it could be a combination of ground floor retail, it could be 2 stories of parking over that, and then a couple of stories of residential. So when you're looking at, we looked at, okay, here's one of the few areas in the city where you can get views of the sunrise and the sunset as well too. So for the residential or the real estate community, that's very valuable as well. So those are one of the things that we started looking at in terms of that. Density as a factor over here, we wanted density over here. The 7 stories, we didn't want to go higher than 7 stories. It's going to depend on the development that's going to go in there. If it will go 7 stories, it may go 5 stories, but it depends on what development is going to come there at the time, at the proper time, and then how is that going to play out, because that's a huge parcel over there as well too. So if a developer is looking at that, they also have to be able to make their money back, or to be able to make enough, or to generate enough income to be able to cover their costs for the development of that as well.
So would there be some kind of requirement mixed in with that allows us, the way you show the node there is a kind of plaza area or activity area that would break the view into the whole district? I mean, that's my concern, and the example you just gave is exactly the 5-story sample that I'm seeing. Bottom story retail, 2 stories maybe of parking, 1-2 stories of residence on top of that. That sounds really cool to me. But once you get up to that 6th and 7th floor, I begin to get the willies.
I think it's exciting, though, me personally, I mean, maybe I'm just a big city
Yeah, your
kind of
example was a
guy.
five-story example, and that excites me too. I think that's really cool.
Personally, I prefer like 80 stories, that would be my dream, 85 stories, maybe.
Yeah, I was born in
you
New
know.
York City too, but this isn't.
But I understand what you're saying, and the idea is to get people in there. I know
Yeah.
the visibility is always going to be a question, are we blocking visibility for the neighborhood as well too?
Yeah.
But the idea is to get individuals in there and create like your own, I don't want to say unique neighborhood, but it's also kind of creating that own area in there as well too, where we kind of funnel the individuals. The idea would be not to block it down Reggie White Way or Bar Star Plaza, whatever, to have those view sheds into there as well too. So while we call for the maximum of 7 stories along Lombardi, I mean, again, it depends on what you guys are comfortable with as well too, but it is also going to depend on the development that goes in there and at what specific time.
Partly I'm feeling sensitive to the people who live across Lombardi. And the idea of a 7-story structure right across the street from me is very different from the idea of a 5-story, since Lombardi's wide.
True.
5-story has some accent value to it, but it still doesn't feel like it's suddenly I'm blocked from the rest of the world.
True, but it wouldn't be the only large structure over there too. I mean, you still have Lambeau Field and you still have the other buildings that's going on over there as well too. That neighborhood along Lombardi Avenue, we discussed that as well too. How do we, with the neighbors around there, but then it's also, is that a neighborhood in potential transition, 10 years from now? Will that still be small, single-family homes as well from there? With those families, with those buildings along Lombardi, would they be redeveloped into 2-story buildings or townhomes or something along there as well too?
Might well happen, sure. The other part of my question, the lower dense area, would that also be that 7-story high max?
No, the lower density, that would be a minimum of
I'm sorry.
2 stories.
It's the other density area, the bright orange,
The bright orange, 5 to 7 stories
yeah.
down along Tony Cannondale
Yeah.
Run? Potentially, yes. I mean, that could be, if there's like a hotel or something that wants to come in, that's 5
Yeah.
stories.
And that I have less trouble with because it's into the district. Okay, thank you for being patient with me.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
I appreciate it.
If I could echo just a reference point and some things that got talked about. The Hilton Garden Inn right now is 5 stories plus a pitched roof. So, I mean, we're starting to get to that area, and I think,
Yeah.
we're looking at a balance in terms of, transition from single family and kind of extreme single family, that we have ranch
Understood.
homes going across the street. Also balancing, in terms of, I think we do want to take advantage of, the developers for some of those, rooms that have the views and can get the views. And it's just about Lambeau, but once you get up a little bit elevation there, you're also looking at, downtown, the Frigo Bridge, all of the city.
Sunrises and
I think,
sunsets.
yeah, I mean, you really start to push it a little further. But I think, yeah, I mean, maybe we can talk a little bit considering here in terms of just some of the massing, maybe not 7 stories right on Lombardi proper, but maybe towards, the back of the building or something,
Yeah.
in some cases
Yeah,
where they
I have an easier
kind of.
time with that.
Where it's tiered.
Right.
Yeah.
My concern is really that frontage right onto Lombardi.
7-story straight up.
Straight up.
Yeah. I think we could all agree that would look really weird on Lombardi, just a 7-story,
face.
Yeah.
7-story
Yeah.
tower.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Liston.
They could be attractive buildings.
Oh, yeah.
Look at page 3-13, chapter 3.
Up at the top there, yes.
And then go to 3.16, chapter 3. And I think the orientation of the building to take advantage of the sunsets, well, look what we have here at City Hall. I mean,
Yeah,
relax.
yeah.
The sunsets are just gorgeous over there, Lambeau. It's just,
And windows make a huge difference too.
Yeah, well, and the way it's really laid out.
A lot of windowing in
Yeah,
them.
these are
Some of
soft,
them
these are
have,
softer because of what they've done on the lower levels.
Yeah.
I know what you're getting at, though, these people across the street all of a sudden are looking at a wall, well, hopefully, maybe when this happens, those people across the street won't be there.
I was also looking at some of the images in chapter 4, like on 416. Those are the ones that were looked at and endorsed especially as images for massing, for scale. And they're all under 5 stories. 4 to 5 stories.
Yeah, yeah.
And they all have a lot of glass. And I guess it's that feeling of permeability that leads me forward that I'd really like to get into here and into the requirements. So my objection would be to 7 stories right on the edge of the Lombardi.
I think we have a long ways to go before we get to that point.
Yeah, well, it's built into.
This has been a long road to get to this.
Yeah, but that is built into the master plan.
Yeah,
And so, I'm very excited about it with that one exception, and that is a very strong exception in my case.
Well, and I think what we talked about too is that Lombardi Avenue itself is almost a buffer because it's a wide street. And I don't know if we had talked about, or someone along the line had talked about streetscapes improvement on Lombardi itself as well. So, so that's a good buffer. Also, on Shadow Lane, all of those houses up to 14th, just before Reggie White, those are all backyards. So it's not like the houses are facing. There are some of the houses between 14th and 12th that are facing, but some of those, I know there's an empty lot over there that someone will probably build a house that will want to face, you know. But Lombardi itself is kind of that buffer as well. But yeah, I agree, just straight glass face, like straight up to the sidewalk.
Straight brick
Right.
face.
Okay.
I just noticed something else also, if you look at this page right here, look at what those houses actually, how they front. They front their streets, they do not front Lombardi Avenue, their sides of their yards kind of front that. So that enters into that, probably then.
And also, please note that there's language in there where we have caps on, I guess, the amount of materials. You know, we don't want like an entire wall of bricks or entire wall of metal or glass or anything in it. So there's definitely
Articulation idea.
Yes,
and
absolutely,
breaking up the frontage.
absolutely.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have people that wish to speak. I will entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, rules are suspended. Vicky Fabry, would you wish to speak?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. Jennifer DeCastro?
Hi, good evening. I am one of the property owners in this division. I own over 10% of the district, actually. There's 2 issues that I have with this master plan, and yes, I was on the committee and did voice my opinions, but unfortunately, my opinions weren't necessarily agreed with. And so, you know, when they talk about assurance when you buy property, I think that's very important, which is why I was excited about this committee. Before we bought, particularly the parcel that is on Tony Canadeo and Bart Starr, we own that and the one across the street. Before we bought this, we had a couple of roundtable meetings with the city and had a site map of the hotel project we had planned. It encompasses this entire parcel, which I made very clear, not only in the committee meetings, but also a private meeting that I had when they wanted to have additional information regarding our site. But when you look at Chapter 3, 315, and the figure is 3.6, that's actually my site. And I was incredibly clear that when we purchased this property, we planned on doing a high-scale, very tall, full-service hotel. The plan was, because the only thing Green Bay has right now is the Hilton Garden Inn down there. We need something, but we can't if it's low, because full service requires a certain number of rooms. So when working with the Marriotts and the Hiltons of the world, they said, geez, this area right now doesn't work for that. But once we started talking about the changes over in Ashwaubenon and so on and so forth, that piqued their interest a little bit more. The problem is when you look at what this particular plan says is going to happen on my site, instead of me developing one full-service upscale hotel. They have a street going through 1/3 of my property, dissecting 30% of my property off, which will put it not part of the entire site that we wanted to do. So my plan was one building, one beautiful hotel, upscale, and I can't do that now if this stays as is. This isn't the first time I'm conveying my concerns. They've been heard. Unfortunately, it isn't shown here. For instance, they want me to do underground parking. We talked about it. That's immense expense. So if the city of Green Bay wants underground parking, they have to consider the cost to that. They have they called it a public plaza across the street on my property again. So they want to take a large chunk of that property, and I will have zero financial return on my investment right there if it's turned into a public plaza, which was not something that was ever discussed to me or with me, because I wouldn't have agreed to that. I'm a real estate investor. I mean, a developer, and we invest in real estate. We wouldn't do it to just turn it over. Now, if the city wants to buy that, and they want to own it, and they want to develop it and make it a beautiful public plaza, I'm okay with that. I'm willing to sell it. But if this is what if you're expecting us to do something like this with all different tenants and different cafes and multi-use, I didn't sign up for that. Before I bought this property, I met with some of you at the city. You knew what my intention was. My intention, and unfortunately, those meetings were January of 15. We are now in 2017. Things transpired. We halted the project. Then I became part of this, and we were very excited to move forward until this landed on my desk as the final, when I said, what is this? And then a road going through my property. If you look, the road stops. It doesn't go to Mike McCarthy Way because we don't own it. City of Green Bay doesn't own that. That's at Schwabenon. So you are potentially putting a road that's going to go nowhere. This isn't the first time, again, I brought that up either. That's frustrating to me. I believe in this project. I believe that the city needs to do multi-use. They need to do these different things. I believe height is a necessity. I love Chapter 4, the designs. I did discuss my concerns with the industrial chic just in the expense side of it as a real estate developer, because that could become cumbersome, not only in cost, but also maintenance. But I love the concept and I agree with it. But what I don't like is when I'm very clear saying, listen, this was my idea. I mean, when this small group came to me, I even disclosed the hotel itself, the chain that we were looking at using. I showed the site plan, and then this is what ends up in here. And I'm disappointed in that. So if that is what you want and you don't want a large hotel, then that is something I guess should have been conveyed to me 2 years ago. And then we'll consider selling the property and let somebody else put up a bunch of mixed use. But I don't know about you all, but I don't like dealing with a lot of tenants. We wanted one business there. So those are my two issues with this, is how they treated my property. Well, I should say 3 issues. 1, the road that leads nowhere. And maybe Ashwaubenon will put that road in, maybe it won't, but you're dissecting my property and you're making it unusable for what my plan was and why I bought it. And, some of you said, oh, well, this is going to take years. Well, guess what? My site is shovel ready. I can break ground anytime. We need somebody to sign on and start the development. That was going to be us. But not with a road going through my property and not with 4 buildings. We signed on to 1. So that was just my personal opinion on what is frustrating as a landowner, a real estate developer in the city, when I'm personally there and I'm telling you what we would like to do, and that isn't evidenced here. You have a question for me?
If I could, please.
Yes.
I want to make sure that I'm understanding the features of your own property that you're talking about. So I'm looking at page 315, right, which you were
Yes.
referencing. Yes. And am I to understand that you own the entire property that's shown here?
Yes, I do. And then also, I want to say it's 5 acres across the street, which has the detention pond that they had talked about earlier, and putting a public plaza there.
And, I'm sorry, 5 acres, which direction across the street?
Across Tony Canadeo.
So above
Yes,
what's shown here?
absolutely.
Okay. So that's the area where the plaza would go?
That's what they're proposing.
As far as the proposal here, the
Sure.
master plan? Okay. And then the road that you're concerned about is the extension just below what reads Cafe Street Zones, right?
Correct.
Which
And
is,
it extends to, right now, an industrial parking lot, which is owned by the Village of it is Village of Ashwaubenon.
Yes.
So this road goes nowhere currently. And we discussed this at length, but somehow it is still here. And when I spoke to the powers that be, they said, well, this is what the city wanted. So if the city wants it, take a look at my site. You've taken a third of my site and dissected it. When I bought it to have one really large, big, beautiful project with green space and sidewalks and all of these things. Something upscale that Green Bay needs. We need that. Think about businessmen that travel, or women. You have hotel points, correct? And you'll stay 15 minutes out of your way to make sure you get to stay at a Hilton or a Marriott. And you would rather stay at a Hilton than a Hilton Garden Inn, because you get the other perks. You have the full service, you have the bar, you have all of these things. We don't have that. We have all these conventions, we have all these concerts and all of everything with the Packer Stadium. We need to have something that's going to keep those people right here. And that is going to be the driving force of starting something to get this project off the ground. And my property is the property is what you would intend to start with, because it's ready.
okay. And then I want to also understand, when you talk about bisecting 1/3 of your property, what's the 1/3 of the property? Is that?
So if you look here, so this is my whole site, right? If
Yeah, I
you,
understand
if you cut my property right here,
Yeah.
all right? That's basically 1/3 of my property, or 30% of my property, that's segregated off. And part of it will be taken for the road.
Right.
So it leaves this.
Okay.
And I don't do small,
Okay.
this isn't what we
I
do.
do understand. When you're saying 1/3, I see that as looking like 1/4, so I didn't know where you were talking
If you
about.
include the road, I believe
Yeah.
it's closer to
Yeah.
1/3.
In any event, I understand what part you're talking about, and that was the important
The
part.
other thing that concerns me is there's multiple easements here. And when we first bought the property, we dealt with those easements, because you have the hotel behind us, you have the little bar right here. All of their stormwater flows into this detention pond. And we're still working through all the details of that, because apparently certain people are supposed to be helping with the expenses of this detention pond. So, but that hasn't been our goal. We really have not cared so much about that. But when you start talking about this, for instance, as well, Burkle's Bar has an easement on my property and my driveway so that they can get into certain parts of their property. If you start putting roads here, and I have these easements and all these other restrictions, it becomes quite problematic for us. Thank you.
We'll return to regular order of business. Any discussion? Alderman Murray.
Thanks. Just a few notes. Obviously, we all agree, I think, exciting project, especially for the west side. I went to a few meetings, just to kind of watch the process and see what was going on, and I appreciate all the hard work and thought by the staff and the citizens and Mr. Shaw's group. I very much like the name Legends District, way better than Uptown, way better. I have one request or suggestion on page 1.18. Kind of lists brownfield areas, and I know this was kind of put together probably before it was redeveloped, but the last item under figure 1.6.8 brownfield summary, the very last one, Angle Commercial Appliance, I think was vacant. It has a new owner. It's now Forever Dance Company. I happen to know that my daughter goes there, so they spent a lot of time and money remodeling it, so it's really not, that should be removed from here. It's fully operational, looks really nice.
Is that still an open brownfield?
Pardon?
Is that still an open brownfield or is that closed?
No, it's a building, but I think it was vacant maybe when this was put together, probably unused, and now it's occupied and they remodeled the entire interior, so it's fully in use. Otherwise looks good. I'm looking forward to moving forward with this, and I know that the Castors and Fabry's own large properties here, and I look forward to what they have in mind, and we do have to listen to the property owners too and what their vision. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I guess I could maybe answer a few of Ms. Castor's questions about the road, and I guess the balance that we're looking for here in terms of city goals, objectives, planning, and property owners. I think one of the things, first of all, I just also want to give credit to Stephanie, who put a lot of work into this, Quayson and his team. Just, I think, came up with an amazing plan, so I'm very pleased with how this turns out, and again, there's a lot of effort in it, and also Ms. Castor, Ms. Fabry, people that were mentioned. I mean, this is a very citizen stakeholder driven effort, and this is their plan. With that, one of the things that came up and was talked about from a city planning point before we even put the plan together is circulation in this area. And I think we as a planning commission and as a city have made a very good commitment to getting integrated and connected neighborhoods. I think we've had very good policies. About a year ago, actually out by Sitka Street, where we talked about whether we should have a cul-de-sac or push that street through. And I think, just from a planning perspective, it has been our mantra, where possible, to make transportation connections. If we can get a street through, we can. If not, we try at least provide pedestrian, bicycle accommodations through those areas to improve the network. This area is really tough because, look, it was primarily industrial, so you didn't need a lot of roads through there. But you do not have access to Ashland Avenue. And so with that, it is very important in terms of just the safety welfare of this area to get those connections up to Lombardi and down to Mike McCarthy Way, if possible. And I think, when this originally was, laid out and Bart Starr going through, one of the concerns and issues that was brought up is how can we get an additional connection down to Mike McCarthy Way, because then you also provide yourself access to Ashland. Again, another thing that was discussed through here is, just visibility. I think to Sid's point, how do you see this area? How do you know this area is there? For most people from coming out of town, you come up Ashland and you go left on Lombardi because that's what you hear of, and 1265 is a pretty recognizable address. For those that know, if you've been here a few times, you might start now cutting down on Mike McCarthy Way is another way to get in here. So providing an additional connection in addition to the safety and welfare of this area and providing relief for congestion and other ways for mobility in that area. It's another potential gateway for this area. And I think just in improving the traffic flow here, both from a vehicle standpoint, but also pedestrian circulation, if it gets people around through in here. With that, we're working in an area that's been kind of built up already. So if we're going to make that connection, we have to look at where on this stretch could we possibly push a street through. And I think what was discussed or what we landed on is the Castor's property that they own. I know they've discussed, some potential developments there. I think a few things in consideration is One, I think just, and I think the planning team behind this and our city would support, look, it's important for us to get that additional connection somewhere down to Mike McCarthy Way. By platting this, on the map, it's saying, look, we have a desire for the street to go through here. Just in terms of our policy and also our public works policy, we would not put a street in if it did not go through Mike McCarthy Way. I don't think we've ever put a street in that serves, a public street that serves a single property. And I pretty confidently say that, our public works would be like, well, there's no reason to put in a public street if it's only serving one property. Well, it should be private. And so with that mapped, I think we've had talks with Ashwaubenon that they would also make an amendment to their map to put that through. And if the time came that the street would go through, it would only go through if both parties agreed to it. And I think that's very important, and just, again, building a street to nowhere, a cul-de-sac doesn't really benefit anyone. With that, I think, in terms of planning with the DeCasters, by putting this street in the plan and on the official map amendment, initially I think it's laid out as a street straight through. I think, if there is, and I know we've discussed a plan, but as far as, officially working off a plan, we would be willing to work with, maybe there's a curve, maybe there's a jog, maybe there's something that accommodates what, the DeCasters would develop, look to do there. And I think we would be open to that in terms of the exact path and the right of way of where it comes through. I think in terms of property value, at first case, if the time comes to put a street through there, that the city would work with you and the property owner, and in this case, the village of Ashwaubenon on the other side. In any case where we put a public street through, we work with the property owner to figure out a way to acquire the property, whether that's at market value, or, we're a city and that government functions in terms of if it ever got to a point, of eminent domain, there's statutory process for going through all of that. And, I'd like to think in a lot of cases where we wanted to put streets through, we've been able to negotiate with property owners to make that happen. We really haven't had to do that. But again, in terms of the bigger welfare of the city, there's that alternative that exists. I know initially, the Casters had talked about one large development here. I also think, what's been proposed in the plan in terms of some of this mixed use, putting a street through does add some value in a sense. It may not seem like it in terms maybe from a single lot development, but by providing now 2 additional corner lots, I think, when you look at the value per square foot or per acre, the corner lots, especially in the retail world, do have some value added to them. And especially ones that can kind of connect down back to Ashwaubenon. With that, I think, we've tried to balance, a lot of different property owners' requests in here. At the end, I don't think every single property owner has 100% of everything they're seeking in here. I think I could just provide just some perspective from planning staff, and the reason for, why we did have this street ultimately in the plan. As a planning document and a strategy, we felt it is in our best long-term interest, whether it happens in a year or 20 years, that we get some sort of connection through that area. And that, I don't know if it answers all your questions, but I guess wanted to provide some context into where we came from our staff.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you stated that if a street would go through, there are some variations as to actually where it would go?
Look,
like for instance, could it go at the end of the property, on the edge, on the lot line? You'd have a jog, but you mentioned that.
Look, and I think this was created in some discussion with our team effort for Public Works. They like 4-way intersections. And I think just in terms of traffic flow and moving people through there's a lot of offset intersections or the crazy bend here already. So that the initial ask or request for the best possible intersection would be to have a full 4-way intersection.
Yeah, and if that was a lot line there, that wouldn't be an issue. It's not a lot.
Correct.
Does Birch Star Road go all the way through to McCarthy?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
So you have that
Correct.
already?
Correct.
So,
think it's important to note too that at the third public workshop that this was noted as one of the best priority items from the public. They were very excited to see this for a lot of different reasons, but it was, I think, the biggest one, Clayson, correct me if I'm wrong. It's like one of the highest 2 priority items that they had ranked for us.
But they didn't buy the property. I did. And they could have bought it. And before I bought it, I had met with the city and told them what I wanted to do. And I pleaded with you all and told you I was not happy with this road, but you did it anyway. And that is not a good feeling for people who want to do business in your city. So we cannot, so does that mean if I come with my hotel plan, you're gonna deny it because you're gonna segregate 25% of my property? So you're gonna hold up a $40 million hotel project? Because you want a road someday to go through my land? Because that's what I asked about. And even so, now you see 4 buildings on my property with the road going through it. No one cared what our plan was, which was specifically conveyed. And that's disturbing. So if that's what you want, and that's why I came here tonight, if what you want is this, and you want 4 different buildings, and you want all different buildings and different uses, I'm not your developer, I'll sell it. Because that's not why I bought it.
If I could make a comment, the 4 buildings on all of the redevelopment sites, that is merely a concept. Those are ones of dozens of concepts that can go in there. It could be a single building, it could be 2 buildings, it could be 10 buildings if it fits your parameters. But I just want you to know that that's merely a concept, for all the 3 redevelopment sites that we have there. It's merely one of a dozen concepts that can happen on those sites.
But what do you want me to do with my sliver of land you're dissecting off? Put another bar there? I mean, this is upsetting. This is very upsetting.
I guess just one other thing, and I know we've talked about future ideas for the plan. At this point, city staff does not have an official plan in the queue in terms of which we're making decisions off of. So I appreciate, Ms. DeCaster in terms of talking about what she would like to do there, but we as a city do not have an official plan in terms of what could happen there. And so I just want to, make sure that the Plan Commission, looks again at, what could happen or may not happen. I don't know. I mean, I'm hopeful that you'll move forward and decide to submit a plan, but we've been, talking 2 years and we don't have anything. And at this point, we're looking at, again, whether it's, regardless, I think, of property owner, of what is the best vested interest of the city. And I feel this is what the landowners, the stakeholders came up with in terms of they feel this is in the best interest of the city to do this street in this neighborhood. Again, it's the Plan Commission's pleasure and ultimately council's pleasure, what they decide to do with that. I guess I'm just reflecting where staff is coming from and also where, the stakeholders in this district.
And if I may, I agree with you 125%. If it is better for the city not to have a hotel on this site and it's better to have other projects, then I have no problem selling the property and listing it for sale and letting someone do what you believe is best for this city. Because I want what's best for the city. I was born and raised here, so was my father and my grandfather and his father. So this is not something that it's upsetting because we bought it for an intent. But if that intent changed, then you need to convey that to me. And you need to say, no, Jennifer, we're going to hold you to it. We are planning on putting a road through your property. Then I'm going to sell it. But then you're going to wait till it sells because I don't want to do a bunch of multi-purpose stuff. And I've already said that. And I said it for the last 6 months. So, and that's okay. Then tell me that.
This, like Kevin said, this is a concept, or like Mr. Shaw said, this is a concept. So the four buildings, whatever, and the heights, they're not set in stone. Actually, this is a high-density area, if I remember right. Is it not? So it could go up to 7 stories.
Absolutely.
So this is the concept, it's nothing set in stone.
The road, though,
As
is-
far as the street goes, that's actually in the next item, so we'll deal with that in the next item.
Oh, I apologize, I didn't
That's
know
okay.
that.
So,
And I guess that's my question. Right now, we're voting specifically on
on
the master plan.
On the master
So
plan,
now with the
so-
master plan, are things like that retention pond being a gathering area and that road going through, are those things that are set in stone in the master plan, or are those just suggestions?
All these are conceptual ideas.
Okay.
So the same thing with any of the plaza areas, any of the informational gathering places, those are things that are where we'd ideally like to see them, but it's not up to the current property owner nor any property owner in the future to fulfill those for the city. So if we wanted to take and buy the detention pond area and develop it as a public open space, the city would work with property owner to do that. All of these things, though, are things that we would like to see for the best interest of the city for the next 5 to 40 years.
Okay. So the road is the next item on the agenda.
Yes.
What we're talking about is just what our highest, best use of that area is.
Yes, if you would like to see these things in the plan, if you agree with them as a general concept, the following application would be to put it on our official map.
any further discussion?
I just want to thank Mrs. Castor for being here and explaining her situation, because a plan like this, in order to go forward, is going to have to deal with competing interests, and we really need to be aware of that as we're looking at it. Thank you very much, and we're sorry that the plan that's in front of us is not what you had hoped for.
Thank you.
Commissioner Westphal.
Oh, I'm full of a lot of questions. Number one, is there a value put on this property at this point in time with this adoption of this plan? So that we don't get into a haggle position of, I think it's worth this much and you think it's worth that much. I just see all kinds of potential problems coming up at a later date. Sounds like this lady here hopefully has had plans for this property, and we're sitting here right now and we're thinking about voting for something that actually has a disgruntled person already. Which leads me to believe in the, it's called a match, I'll leave the first word off, but we're actually proceeding with something that's potential problem related. And I'm concerned about that. I see that Jennifer was on the steering committee, and if I may, I'd like to ask her one question.
You may.
Did any of this stuff come up in your steering committee so you had any inkling? And I know you've been talking about this hotel for a long time. I agree with you. There's a void, even with that big monster coming over on the other side of the stadium, the type of hotel that you're talking about. I also have a pretty good imagination of making things work, and right off the bat, you're worried about that street going through. I picture your grandiose hotel going in there with possibly some bridging that, and going to the restaurant, and wow, I mean, there's just all kinds of things you can do. And this gentleman over here could probably shed some light on some of that stuff there. I think there's a possible way of working this out, and I don't think at this point in time, I'm very concerned about haggling about this at a later date and getting some outlandish dollar values on this. And how far does the city go with somebody who's put themselves in that position to actually buy a property with plans? There's no limitations really on when you come through with your plans, is there?
That's why I came tonight.
Pardon me?
That's why I came tonight, to say, listen, I was actually part of this committee, and that was something I said.
No, I'm talking about your plan for the hotel. I don't know if there's such a plan, but I know you have the ideas and thoughts. And I, along with you, have been sitting here and designing a building to go across that road and everything else and making it work. But and I can see what Kevin is talking about. He's a planner. He's making everything work citywide, and that's very important. He's putting a big stressful importance on that road to cut through, and I can't help but see the value of that also. But I guess I'm just kind of concerned with, anybody have any ideas where we end up? Kevin, can you help us on?
Well, yeah.
Can you see where I'm heading with this? It's just, we're.
Yep, no, and I think there's some
We're kicking
issues-
somebody in the butt right now, I guess.
Look, and I think there's some alternatives we could take when we get, to the next item on the agenda. I mean, I talked a little bit with our attorney about this and maybe where things stand, and I don't know if you want to provide some perspective on, I guess, maybe where we're at.
Sure, so as far as your question goes, as far as valuation of the property, the way it would work is if we choose to pursue acquiring the property, we enter into good faith negotiations to see if we can actually purchase it. It's not until that actually breaks down that eminent domain proceedings would even take into, be a consideration. And at that point, you value the property based on the date of taking. So the day that we've decided we're gonna take it is the day that we actually have to value that property. So we can't do it now because the value of the property could change. It's currently vacant is my understanding, but that may be not the case at a later date. And so we have to value it based on what's going on with the property at the date that it's taking.
With that in mind, and I don't want to be choosing sides here, but I would think at this point in time, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, and attorney, that it behooves Jennifer to come up with a plan. And now both these things hit at the same time.
Well, I will let Kevin speak to that, but what I can say is that there are no vested rights in a plan until it's actually approved.
And I know this has not happened. I know there's been a lot of talk about it. Boy, I've been involved in some of the discussion of this property for 5-6 years already, and with some of the owners and the hotel people out that way. But
So,
the same token,
sure.
Can you see, I just see us getting into a kind of a muddle here.
So one of the ways, I mean, you could address this is, in the plan, look, the plan and how it's implemented, I mean, that's what we deal with here. I mean, I think we're doing it right now on University Avenue. I mean, we had a corridor plan, we've had some projects come through. They're not to a T exactly how they are in the plan, but they fulfill, basically the intents and objectives of what's happening there. So if we're talking about this street, we could see an alternative is, the next item on the agenda is to talk about an official map amendment to put this street through. I think if the Plan Commission decides like, look, we would like to put this on our map because we feel it's in the best interest of the city to have the street go through, then we do so. It's not saying we're gonna get underway construction or do anything right away at the moment, but look, long-term planning, I mean, you look at the east side, all over the east side, I mean, we've got planned streets, an official map of where all our future streets are gonna go.
That goes into this type of development, and your credentials as our consultant, basically.
So if we do that, and I think, Ms. DeCaster has two choices. One, she could say, look, all right, that's where the street is going through, and I could plan accordingly for that and have a smaller lot on the west and a larger lot on the right and work to make a plan that fits that. Or she could also say, look, I'm gonna stick to my original hotel plan that takes up that 6 acres, and I'm gonna submit that plan, but then part of that submission is, look, here's a request to remove this street from your official map. I think we've had cases like that where we've taken away streets, we've removed streets because that's not how it fits within the plan. And that way, we're balancing, I don't think by doing that, and then at that time, I think Plan Commission has a much more, I guess, realistic value of, look, what do we value more? Project in hand and this type of development, or is our real mantra to have, a real objective to have the street go through? The other is just to not do the street and wait on a plan, and, I can't tell, I don't know, the time frame of what that is, and take up the street at a later date, see if a plan comes through and do the street later. I think, with that, I think there's some options before us right now that, look, I mean, this is a governing body, and in every governing body, there's a process to change things in the future. But by moving forward with this plan and then how you handle the next item, I think just talking out loud here, those are some alternatives that you can address.
Did the steering committee talk about that potential development and they were, and I'm assuming they talked about it and were against it?
The steering committee was in favor, Ms. DeCaster was not. So there was just a discussion point. Basically, the meetings are ran really casually. We presented different options. Everyone had an around the table discussion about how they felt about it. But then the plan generally reflects what the entire CSC was looking for.
Okay. And in doing that, it was because they felt that it would serve their interest better to have the street go through.
The city's interest.
Essentially, what we're saying.
Commissioner Miller.
I think we're getting a little far away from or ahead of ourselves, I'm sorry. A lot of this is really going on topic 5, and I think we should try to get this funnel back in here a little bit. I think there's a lot of this can be discussed and figured out with that, but we're looking at the plan right now, and I'm not seeing any reason why we shouldn't be getting ready to approve this. So I'd like to get back to normal session and possibly get a vote going.
I agree.
Is there anybody on your list other than whom we've heard from already?
No. Mrs. Faby didn't wish to speak? Correct? Or do you wish to speak?
I have a lot going through my mind right now. I'll speak, yeah, actually. Thank you for giving me another opportunity. I know usually you don't, if someone declines, entertain that. I do own a large part of the plot that's going on there. And I feel very strongly that I think that what we, as a committee, as the neighbors, and as everyone has worked really hard, I think that it's going to be a great opportunity for the city of Green Bay. I think that it enhances, it brings businesses, it brings people, it brings life, and I think this is one of those neighborhoods that could really do something for Green Bay. You know, people are asking, are you going to change your property, are you going to change your buildings? Well, who knows, right? Do we retrofit? Do we change? Do we, what do we do? We don't know right now, but I think if we can at least get a plan started, it's going to be better than what's happened in the last 10 to 15 years, which has been nothing, which has been trucking companies that were taken down and vacant land that's been sitting there. Yes, there have been things that have opened, the hotels, the brewery, prime example, has been great for the neighborhood, and it's been a great start to see, people are loving that kind of thing. They're coming to this kind of neighborhood, and I think that what we can do in this neighborhood just kind of finishes the corridor, if you will. It's a great entrance to Green Bay. It's right off of 41. You're bringing people in, you've got, obviously, Lambeau. This can be a great neighborhood. It can be not only a neighborhood, it can support hotels. I think we can do some residences. I think there is a place for this. It also kind of brings people to the downtown area. So it's not a standalone. I think it's great for the whole city. I really do. Totally understand the road situation. If it were my property, I'd probably be saying the same thing. I'd be saying, well, maybe we could put it on the end, or we could do something. I don't know. But I think for us to do this, I think it's important that we try to work with Ashwaubenon as well, because they've got McCarthy Way right next to it. And I think that whole area, if we can work together, can be something really beneficial to, again, Green Bay, Ashwaubenon, greater Green Bay, I guess I always kind of say. So that's basically my statement. I think that we have a tremendous opportunity here. I think that I'd like to talk to you about zoning, because we don't want to be changing things too quickly. But I think we've got tremendous ideas, and the people who have been on the committees have put an awful lot of time and effort into it, and I think they've done a terrific job. You guys have put together a great idea, a great plan, so I just would welcome your approval, and I thank you for hearing me. Thanks.
Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Brennan.
I'm hoping that the PUD might reflect the conversation we had about the 7 stories on fronting on Lombardi. But having said that, given what we had in front of us, I would like to move approval.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I would just like to say on my own behalf that understanding that this is a conceptual thing,
Yes.
and nothing has yet is set in stone. I would also be in favor of this, as for the plan. Okay. Commissioner?
I don't like it, but I can't really vote against it, and I guess I would like to say that I think it behooves the petitioner, basically, I'm just going to color that for lack of, I think that's what you probably would say, that wants to come up with a plan, obviously get that plan going and get it out here right now. So I think it can't hold up progress by wishful thinking and things like that. And I like the ideas and thoughts she has. I think it has some merit. I definitely would like to see it, and I'd like to see it yesterday. I think that's one of the issues that we're trying to face here. So, all right, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Item 5. Consideration with possible action on the request to amend the official map for the Legends District Veggie Way extension.
Thank you. So this is the follow-up. So what you're looking at here would be the map for the extension of the Ridgeway Way corridor. We are only responsible for the City of Green Bay side. Obviously, the Village of Ashwaubenon, we have had conversations with their Public Administration Department and also their Department of Public Works, and they are more than willing to do an extension on their side if we do approve to do one on our side. So they would have to do their own process of an official map amendment, but then they also had stated that they'd be looking to replicate our designs, whichever type of road design or design guidelines that we have in this area, they would also be looking to replicate. So we do have their full support on this. We've basically discussed everything else that we need to look at as far as what the lot division would look like, what kind of access that we'd be granting them. Something else, though, that's in your packet is a letter of support from the fire department. They are looking to get this connection just because they're always looking to increase connectivity. This area is really closed off. I think the most important reason for these connections is because, as Kevin had mentioned before, we don't have direct access to Ashland. We have it here in Lombardi and then again on Mike McCarthy Way, but we don't really have a lot of east-west access because there's not a place to put it. There's already a road or a building here. This has a different jurisdiction, so getting a roadway to go straight through, which would be great, is going to be nearly impossible. We have looked at it as an alternative. There isn't a way to put a road through here either, so we can't really do a lot of east-west connection, which is why Tony Canadale, as it stands now, is going to be very important to us in the design feature. But as far as access is concerned, we really want to make sure that we're able to do north-south access because we do have the ability and the space to do so. So when talking to people, that's the basic thing that they kept reiterating is that we have very limited access to go east-west, but north-south we do have some opportunity to make more of a grid system, which is beneficial for a lot of reasons, including safety, community development, and also access to the properties. As far as the comprehensive plan goes, this whole area calls for commercial, and again, with the zoning, it is zoned for commercial right now. So we are recommending approval of the request. Terry?
Where is the serving fire department located?
The what?
Where is the fire department that actually services this area? Where is it located?
I couldn't tell you that. I don't know if Kevin knows.
Either Mason Street or Westport, I believe.
Or Shawano.
Or the Shawano, yeah. Probably the Shawano.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Berman.
So as I'm understanding from our previous conversation, one of the advantages of this is a four-way intersection at the heart of the Legends District, right?
Yes.
And the only alternative to that would be looking at the Bark Star Drive and a taking of property at the back of Thunder Lodge to make a four-way intersection there that would run over to Ashland.
I think that we would run into issues with the state because Ashland is a state highway.
Thank you.
Commissioner Miller.
Does putting this through enable the next step with Ashwaubenon to get the process moving? Or what exactly is amending the map in this situation doing?
Sure. So once we have an official map done on a property or over an area, it basically just negates a property owner from pulling a building permit on that section of the property. So it doesn't require a road to go through. It doesn't say that it is going to happen. It does not take property. It says that the city plans to have a road here at some point, and it slows down the process by not allowing them to pull a building permit. So what the Village of Ashwaubenon is looking for is basically our assurance that we are going to commit to doing this as well. So this is our conceptual step that we say, this is what we're planning to do in the future, so that way they can replicate it as well. But they, again, as we discussed, would not be putting a road through without us also doing the same thing. We did the same thing with Bart Star Way, where both of our departments of public works worked hand in hand to do the design and the coordination of that.
And to follow up, sorry, making that amendment to the map, again, does not put the road through, and it does not stop someone from putting a proposal on that property that would counteract that road going through.
Yes, that's correct.
Just a second, I'm confused. I thought you said it would prevent somebody from getting a building permit.
To put a building on the space.
Right.
So you could not, if this goes on the official map, you cannot pull a building permit to put a building on that right-of-way area.
So this would stop Ms. DeCaster's current plan, right?
I don't
So
have a
far,
plan submitted, but
assuming that it was a plan that was intended to go across that area without any tunneling or whatever that would accommodate the roadway.
if a building were to be proposed to go on there, they would not be able to pull a building permit to do that.
Unless it accommodated the roadway, right?
So
it
if
were-
the building were off to the east,
Yes,
there
so
could
if
be
the
no
rest of the
structure on
site-
top of the future right of way. So at 80, it'd be, I think it's 80 feet
Mhm.
right away over there. So no permit could be issued for any structure that would be on that 80-foot stretch.
Actually, excuse me, I'm sorry, it's 60.
60.
Yes.
Okay.
It could be to the west of it, could be the east of it, but no structure could be on
And
top
what
of
I'm
it.
asking about is that the ground or all the way up? I'm talking about the kind of construction that has been done, for instance, at the old Yonkers, Prangies, whatever.
Then it's still treated as right-of-way, so whatever the height the DPW requires for access over, which I'm not sure what that is,
Mhm.
that would still be retained.
Okay, I understand.
And we would have the ability to change this back if a proposal were to come forward that
Yes.
warranted that change.
This is a standard request for city action.
I mean, some cases, I mean, I think you look at the downtown area, there's been cases where we even take roads or streets or alleys and request to vacate them. I mean, the whole surplus property argument, even if it is constructed, it's still possible. There's always a process for it to go back into private hands.
But I'm eager not to mislead Ms. DeCaster in any way, shape, or form. It sounds as if, given the collaboration with Ashwaubenon, this would stop her from building a building that would go the full length of her current property.
If the official map amendment is approved tonight as proposed, she could not put a structure over this area of the road. Yes.
Okay. And there wouldn't be any option for bringing it back to us.
No, the official map amendment is a planning commission process, so it goes to planning commission and city council. So if you were to approve it tonight, and then she came in and said, I have a new proposal, it could come before this body, and you all could make that decision to remove.
To take the street out again.
Well, if it's on the official map,
If it was
yes.
on the official map. What I'm asking is if we're doing this along with Ashwaubenon, does that preclude us from being able to take the street out at a future time?
I would think that if the street is already built, it would be harder unless Ashwaubenon had a good reason to do so. If it's just on both of our official maps, it's much easier to remove.
Thank you.
Well, it is in the one-year work plan to work with neighboring communities on that. So, I would think if we follow through on that, within a year, we would know is this doable or isn't it? If it isn't, then we can do what we want to do.
Can't go over, but can you go under it?
Go under it, like with utilities?
Street. Said you can't really go over the street, but can you go under it?
I can't think of a situation in which a private developer would be going under the street, like a tunnel?
You got a vivid imagination, and nothing can be done, yeah, it's just,
I think I would have to.
my mind
defer
would
to
go
Public
100
Works on
miles an
that.
hour here too for quite a while.
So, I mean, with that, yeah, under, I don't know practical, but over, I mean, if you look at the KI Convention Center, we have a facility
Yes.
that goes over
Yeah,
Public Street.
yeah.
So, I mean, there is opportunities.
It's just treated as right-of-way once it's on the map.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Alderman.
I keep looking at the map and why can't the road jog over a little bit? And go on the end of the property. I don't know, I'm not an engineer, I don't know. But why can't it just go on the end of the property, just have a little jog or a curve instead? Why does it have to be in the middle?
Typically, it goes against basic planning principle to purposely put something offset. We have a lot of roadways, even if you look right here where, let's see, Tony Canadeo, in theory, should come right out here. That would make a clean intersection. But right now, we have a jog that goes up and then goes out. This has already created a problem for us because then you get here and you don't know if there's anything back here because there's no a wall of buildings, and this doesn't necessarily invite people in. This is something that we would have looked for when we're doing current community development, because this was, I'm sure, retrofitted in some way, shape, or form. But if you look at clean intersections, you can see where people are coming from. It's easier to access them. They're easier points if you say, oh yeah, it's at the corner of this and this. People can find it much easier. Not to say that a connection point to one side or the other wouldn't be beneficial to the city, but it doesn't help with our sight lines that we're looking for in this district. It wouldn't help with pedestrian connections. The more uncommon intersections that you make, the more unsafe it is for a pedestrian to be able to use the roadway as it's intended. So, not impossible, but certainly not preferred.
I think, I mean, Elder Dorf, if you look at just the north of Lombardi and all the offset intersections that are there, it's a very difficult place to cross. And that's one of the things, you know, we've tried in this plan to look at, you know, ways to improve pedestrian crossings, treatments, you know, engineering to get them across. The four-way intersections, both for the vehicle, pedestrian, and bicyclists, have just generally been much safer. And I think if we have an opportunity, again, before any structure is built, to do that, I guess it behooves us just from a pure planning perspective to do that.
I don't know if I missed this or not, but I'm just looking at this. Why can't Bar Star be the access road?
It is. It connects.
Huh?
It does connect currently.
Oh.
So Ridgeway Way is not.
Well, why isn't that sufficient for this area? You need more?
Well, we're looking at this as a master plan, so you're looking for the next 30 years of development. If each property in there gets redeveloped, you're going to need more than one access point.
Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you.
I also think something else to note is that if you look at some of the streetscape options, BART Star is looking to do less as far as pedestrian amenities are concerned, because there's a lot of sites that aren't going to be developed. The Tundra Lodge is already there. It does not front onto that roadway. So you're not going to put wide sidewalks with cafe plazas because it's unnecessary. So that's where we're looking to do a bike lane actually on the road, because it could connect up into the neighborhood all the way up to Shauna, where I think is at West High School. So there'd be a full connection from that neighborhood all the way down here with a bike service. Versus if we're looking at Reggie White and Tony Canadeo, those would be more for pedestrian amenities, because we can do redevelopment options where it fronts directly onto the street. You'd be able to do the Cafe Plaza areas, so to be able to pull that through would be much more beneficial, especially considering that BART Star is pretty well developed.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have people wishing to speak on this matter again. Motion to suspend the rules.
Motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, rules are suspended. Mr. Castor, do you wish to speak on this any further, or? have you
I would
pretty much-
just reiterate, this is incredibly expensive property. We know with Lambeau Field, all of the values of our properties are going up, which is one of the reasons why I was in support of doing this district. But you are running a road directly through my property, and I am here asking you not to do it because it goes against what we were intending to do with our property. I'm specifically telling you that. Have I taken a plan before you yet? No. But I have shown site plans to many of you, and in our private meeting, you did see a site plan with a building that was going over that. But neither here nor there. No, it's not submitted. But I didn't buy the property to just let it sit there and cost me tax dollars. So, I don't want the road. I'm asking you not to put it in. I guess that's all I can say. And if you don't want a large-scale hotel there, which needs the entire site, then we'll sell it and let somebody else build 2 small hotels. I've had so many people want to buy this property, and we've turned it down. But if that's what you want, and you want some smaller hotels, then put the road through, and we'll sell it. And then someone else can come in and do something else. Thank you.
Ms. Fabry, did you wish to speak again?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay. We will get back to regular order of business. Any discussion? I am inclined myself to not approve the extension at this time, in the hopes that Mr. Castor will submit a plan in the near future. And at that time, we can decide what to do with the extension or not. That is my feeling.
Is this something that we can revisit in a year? I mean, if we were to deny it today, it would have to be a year before we come back.
Correct.
It's still in the plan as a concept, and so, you know, it's still there, but I kind of agree with what Tim said. Is there a need to put it on the official map at this point?
I think so. I mean, that's why I brought the application forward. If it does not go on the official map, then we could get a site plan submitted tomorrow, put a building there. We wouldn't have the necessary tools to say you cannot put a building there, and then the road extension would die.
I think to Stephanie's point, look, I understand where Mr. Castor is coming from. I also understand that this is a document that's been created by a number of stakeholders, and that recommendation has come out of a multifaceted group, and to take that into consideration.
Commissioner Miller.
What this is reminding me of is the Schreiber Building in Adams, on how I would love to have that connection from Adams out to Maine. The difference there is Schreiber had a solid proposal for that entire property that came forth that was a massive, huge development that's sitting right there. I could give up the fact that I wish that road went through because of the building that Schreiber is right now. There's no proposal here right now, and I don't want to be held hostage on something that's not actually in front of us. What we have is a proposal to basically reconnect the street grid, which is going to help connectivity overall. I can't take something into account that isn't there. I mean, everyone's opinion should, of course, be a property owner definitely should be taken into account, but there's nothing for us to go off of at this point. So I don't see a reason why it can't be put in on the map right now, not a road put on the map right now.
And to Stephanie's point as well, about, right now, there's not a lot going on over here. But if this is fully developed to this master plan's standards, I think at that point, we would want that connectivity. Us approving that road to go through doesn't mean the road is through tomorrow. There's no plan in the works right now for it to go through. I mean, there would have to be talks with Ashwaubenon. But yeah, I have to kind of agree with Commissioner Miller.
Any further discussion?
I'll just
Commissioner
add my voice also in agreement with my 2 colleagues immediately here. Repeating that I so appreciate Ms. Castor coming in and letting us know what the issue is. Because this is not going to be the last time that this sort of issue comes up with what is a very ambitious and very courageous plan. But it is one that is not without costs and not without difficult kinds of negotiations and trade-offs. And it seems to me that opening up the center, the heart of the district in this way is something we need to do in order to be able to move forward on the master plan.
Is that a motion?
I would entertain a motion.
So I move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? I am opposed.
I'll oppose it too.
Two opposed?
I gotta approve it.
You just voted for, Jerry, did I hear? Or not? Jerry? Jerry, did you just vote for?
For, yes.
You're for.
Thank you.
So 4 and 2 against?
Correct.
Okay, the motion passes.
So this will be at City Council on February 7th. Tuesday, February, just to make sure I get the date right.
That's right.
Tuesday, February 7th, and the full council will take it up at that time. It's sort of been a tie. I'd have to talk to Vanessa, this basically goes without a recommendation.
Well, it kind of takes for notice.
I mean, council decides anyway. So we basically have to be forced to vote on it. Sure. So director's update, there is no update. We were iced out of our last council meeting, so all those pending items will go to February 7th on tonight's agenda, so we will
Bring your
stack it.
sleeping bag, Dave.
Stack it.
Had some interesting meetings.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Where to find this week?